favorite rapper at? I don't see that. I'm in the streets. Look behind him. Yeah, hip-hop.
There are certain moments in hip-hop where one line, one bar, or one slick comment shifts the entire culture overnight. And that's exactly what happened the day Rick Ross messed with the wrong Atlanta rapper. A moment that threw him into the middle of gang politics, territorial tension, and a feud with one of the most respected forces in the South. Rick Ross has always been bold with his pen, never afraid to name drop, throw subtle jabs, or flex imagery tied to the streets.
Stayed away from it. Because I know who I am. Yeah, And I know how easy it is for me to, I might have bought something. Yeah, you could, they would reach out and stuff like that, and I would avoid it.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't good for where I was at. I was like, nah. Because everything else that was going on says I would do it.
But when that boldness collided with Atlanta's real underworld, everything changed instantly. The situation didn't begin inside a boardroom, studio session, or label dispute. It began with Ross rapping a line he thought was just creative storytelling, a line that ended up touching one of the most dangerous crews in Atlanta and sparking immediate retaliation. The Atlanta scene has always been unique because it's not just about rap. It's about respect, lineage, and the invisible rules that keep the city from turning into total chaos.
One time, this called me and said, "Yo, Jeezy, we going to Cancun." I said, "Who, Meech?" "We." "Who the f is we?" "Everybody. Call everybody you know. I'm gonna call everybody I know." This chartered a plane, not a jet, a plane, and took 300 people to Cancun, Mexico.
Ross, coming from the Miami landscape, operated with a different sense of street identity. His persona, brand, and lyrical style all revolved around high-level criminal imagery, powerful street figures, and the illusion of untouchable empire energy. But Atlanta's streets aren't built on illusion, they're built on reputation, real reputation, earned from block to block, hood to hood. And when Ross referenced an Atlanta figure without clearance, without context, and without understanding the ties behind the name, the backlash came swift. The moment the bar reached the wrong ears, phone calls were made and threats traveled faster than the track itself. The gang Ross had inadvertently disrespected wasn't known for letting things slide.
So in my words, I just feel like a lot of these cats are actors, rappers, and I'm Jeezy, you know what I'm saying? And they can never be me.
Their presence stretched far beyond Atlanta clubs and studios. They held weight in neighborhoods, federal watch lists, and the broader southern underworld. Their response wasn't theatrical. It was cold, direct, and deeply rooted in a code Ross couldn't maneuver around with fame. The streets whispered first, then social media caught wind, and suddenly Ross was facing a problem he couldn't solve with interviews or brand partnerships. This wasn't album promo. This wasn't rap theatrics. This was a real-world conflict with real-world consequences. And to make matters worse, the situation arrived at a moment where Ross was already dealing with tension involving another Atlanta giant, Young Jeezy, someone who held more respect, more street validation, and more credibility in the city than Ross could touch.
I just felt like, he spoke, I spoke, and that was basically it. But at the end of the day, it's been going on for a while, so I just felt like if it was to be handled, it should have been handled there.
Right.
We were gonna get past it to keep moving.
At the end of the day, it's bigger than Rick Ross and it's bigger than Young Jeezy, you know what I mean? It's a culture that we represent, and at the end of the day, we never had stepped on each other's toes.
The collision of both problems created a storm that forced Ross to navigate the most dangerous pressure he had experienced in his career. What happened next would define one of the most chaotic chapters in Ross's journey, a reminder that not every bar is just entertainment, and not every city reacts the same way when you mention the wrong name at the wrong time. The Atlanta rapper Ross accidentally crossed wasn't just a random street figure, it was someone with deep-rooted affiliations that stretched far into the South's criminal infrastructure. This individual had a reputation built on years of real movement, respected by people who rarely respected anyone in the rap industry. So when Ross dropped the line that referenced his name, many saw it as disrespect, not because of what Ross said, but because of what it implied.
What do you think made Meech, drew so many people to Meech? What was it about him?
Because he cared, man. Like, he really did. Like like he's a genuine dude.
In Atlanta, referencing a well-known figure can be seen as claiming connection, claiming alignment, or claiming validation that hasn't been earned. Ross didn't mean it that way, but the streets don't care about artistic interpretation. They care about codes. Almost immediately, stories began circulating from club promoters, DJs, and Atlanta insiders that the wrong people were pressing Ross for answers. The tension wasn't loud, it was silent and targeted, the kind of tension that moves through back channels and whispered conversations. Promoters started reconsidering bookings, security teams enhanced protocols, and people around Ross started advising him to stay cautious when traveling through the South.
Up though, he took a deep breath. When he stepped up, he had to face me though, to get to Jeezy. And when he stepped up, I yanked his chains off. Yeah, for the chain. But the fake ones, nobody wanted it. It was like, it's fake. They said that's a high-priced costume, Houston costume jewelry.
And you went across the street and bought an AK-47.
Fan bases online only saw the surface, but behind the scenes, the situation was spiraling quickly. At the same time, Ross was navigating a long-standing rivalry with Young Jeezy, who already had strained history with him. The two rappers represented different eras and energies in Southern rap. Jeezy was rooted in authenticity, in real street connections, in stories that aligned with Atlanta's blueprint. Ross operated in imagery, cinematic, exaggerated, and larger than life. When Ross crossed paths with the Atlanta figure, Jeezy's reputation only magnified the backlash. Ross looked like an outsider, Jeezy looked like the one with hometown validation, and the streets loved to rally around authenticity over theatrics. This tension eventually boiled over during a highly publicized awards weekend, where the two camps collided backstage. Accounts vary from witness to witness, but the energy was unmistakable.
What is it? What is it, Jeezy?
Where your favorite rapper at? I don't see that. I'm in the streets. Look behind me. Yeah, hip-hop.
And then he did the BMF song over, and they was beefing off of that, remember? And then Jeezy did the BMF song.
Ross had stepped into a world where his persona met the real consequences of city politics he didn't fully understand. People who had never cared about his music suddenly cared about his choices. The Atlanta rapper he referenced became the centerpiece of conversations about Ross trying to borrow credibility that didn't belong to him. And every time Ross tried to move past it, someone resurfaced the bar, the disrespect, and the implications behind it. It wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a cultural misstep, one that rubbed Atlanta the wrong way and created ripple effects Ross couldn't control. The situation forced Ross into a defensive position. For someone known for projecting dominance, silence became an unfamiliar form of survival. Ross learned quickly that the South isn't a place where you can casually reference the wrong person without fallout. And the fallout was only just beginning. The feud with Young Jeezy intensified everything. The city of Atlanta already had questions about Ross's credibility, but Jeezy's presence in the situation amplified the divide.
I refuse to be a part of this WWF, propaganda and BS to sell records. You know what I mean? If that's who you want to be, you want to be a tough guy, you be that. I'm a boss. You know what I'm saying? I'm a G. But I assure you, I can't speak for everybody, but ain't nobody putting no hands on me.
Jeezy wasn't just an Atlanta rapper. He was a street figure elevated into rap royalty, someone deeply respected by people who don't give respect easily. And with Jeezy being connected to many of the same circles Ross accidentally offended, the tension became bigger than just two artists trading words. It became a referendum on authenticity, territory, and reputation within the South. Jeezy and Ross's issue wasn't new. Their early careers overlapped in similar lanes: street rap, kingpin imagery, and hustler themes. But Jeezy's story felt grounded in reality, while Ross's felt cinematic. Fans debated for years whether Ross borrowed too heavily from narratives that weren't his. And when Jeezy publicly questioned Ross's background, the comparison spread like wildfire. So when Ross's bar rubbed the wrong Atlanta figure the wrong way, Jeezy didn't even need to say anything. The streets spoke for him. Their feud reached a breaking point during one of hip-hop's biggest industry weekends, where the two camps reportedly clashed backstage in an explosive confrontation. Security had to intervene, entourages began shoving, and for a moment it felt like the industry was seconds away from witnessing a full-blown brawl that would have changed careers forever.
But I assure you, I can't speak for everybody, but ain't nobody putting no hands on me.
I heard that.
Yeah, so I can't say that for everybody involved.
He stepped up though. He took a deep breath. When he stepped up, he had to face me though, to get to Jeezy. And when he stepped up, I yanked his chain.
The aftermath was even more chaotic, with rumors spreading about who started it, who escalated it, and whether the altercation was tied directly to Ross's disrespect toward the Atlanta figure. What made things worse for Ross was that Jeezy held far more leverage in the South. DJs favored him, promoters prioritized him, radio stations championed him, and the people Ross offended, they respected Jeezy. That meant Ross wasn't just fighting an individual, he was fighting cultural gravity, a city rallying behind someone they trusted over someone they didn't. Ross tried to keep the feud contained through interviews, subliminals, and industry posturing, but the more he talked, the more the tension grew. Fans could feel the frustration in every bar, every press quote, every subtle shot. Ross had built an empire through confidence, but now that confidence was being tested by forces he couldn't intimidate or out-rap. And because it all started with one misplaced line, the situation became a lesson about precision, how one lyric can deconstruct years of image building in seconds. The Atlanta rapper Ross referenced never needed to respond publicly. His name alone carried enough weight to shake Ross's foundation. And as Ross's feud with Jeezy intensified, it became clear that the Miami rapper had stumbled into a war that combined gang pressure, regional loyalty, and hip-hop competition. A trifecta no artist wants to face at the same time. Over time, the backlash against Ross became a case study in how street politics influence hip-hop more than people realize. Many fans outside the South didn't understand why the situation escalated so quickly, but people inside Atlanta knew exactly why. There are unwritten rules about who can say what, who can reference who, and how certain names must be used with caution. Ross violated those rules not intentionally, but through assumption. He assumed he had the right to incorporate Atlanta street names into his storytelling, just like he did with Miami references. But the South is territorial, and rappers must earn trust before claiming proximity to real figures. As Ross fought to rebuild his standing, he faced increasing pressure from the rumor mill. Some claim certain Atlanta sets banned him from performing in specific areas. Others claimed he had to hire additional security and avoid certain clubs during tours. Whether these stories were true or exaggerated didn't matter. They contributed to an atmosphere where Ross felt targeted, scrutinized, and challenged on every level. The incident became folklore, a cautionary tale for any rapper who thought they could borrow street identity without consequences. Meanwhile, Jeezy continued thriving, securing features, endorsement deals, and increased cultural standing. The feud only elevated his reputation as someone who stood on business, someone who didn't have to respond loudly because the streets responded for him. That contrast made Ross's situation even more frustrating. The more he tried to shake the narrative, the heavier it became. And the more he tried to move past the controversy, the more people brought it up as proof he had crossed a line he didn't fully comprehend. Ross eventually realized that running from the situation wouldn't work. He needed to reclaim momentum through music, business moves, and a renewed focus on empire building rather than persona building. He tightened his circle, strengthened his brand, and doubled down on his own story rather than referencing others. Fans noticed the shift. His lyrics became more introspective, less reliant on borrowed street imagery, and more grounded in the empire he created through hard work rather than narrative flexing. In the long run, this controversy shaped Ross in ways most fans never recognized. It humbled him, it shifted his priorities, and it reinforced a truth that every rapper learns eventually. Authenticity isn't just about storytelling, it's about respecting the culture that built the hip-hop landscape. And the day Ross messed with the wrong Atlanta rapper became the turning point that taught him that lesson permanently. By the time the dust settled, Ross had rebuilt his image, restored his momentum, and distanced himself from the Atlanta conflict that once threatened to derail his career. He pivoted into boss-level branding, business ownership, franchises, partnerships, and power moves that didn't rely on street politics. The controversy served as a wake-up call, forcing him to evolve beyond the persona that originally defined him. Ross remained a lyrical powerhouse, but he stopped playing with narratives that could drag him into real-life danger. Instead, he focused on controlling his empire from a distance, making calculated moves and leaving territorial disputes behind. Even though the conflict faded, the story never disappeared. Fans still talk about it, industry insiders still reference it, and Atlanta still remembers the moment Ross's words collided with the city's reality. It remains one of the most infamous reminders of how fragile the line is between entertainment and the streets, a line Ross crossed unintentionally but paid heavily for in reputation and relationships. It also stands as a warning for artists navigating cities with deep histories, powerful affiliations, and unspoken boundaries. Atlanta isn't just a market, it's a cultural fortress, and anyone entering that fortress must understand the rules before speaking on names with weight. In the end, the situation strengthened Ross. It forced him to move smarter, talk wiser, and handle business in a way that avoided unnecessary wars. But it also shaped hip-hop's understanding of respect, proving that even the biggest artists can face consequences when the wrong line reaches the wrong ears. This is the day Rick Ross messed with the wrong Atlanta rapper, a day that transformed his career, disrupted an entire region, and forever changed the trajectory of Southern rap politics. If you're locked in with stories like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dive breakdowns into hip-hop's biggest scandals, conflicts, and culture-shifting moments.